Hi, welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick and co-host is Chris Lucian. And definitely very excited for an awesome conversation with Jesse Riley today. We're going to be talking about pairing mobbing in startups and small companies, lean XP developers as competitive advantage, and maybe a couple other things. Before we jump to those, Jesse, can you give an introduction for yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody. Jesse Riley. I've been in tech, product, startups, all that sort of stuff for about 20 years, a little over that now. Got my teeth cut early in the days of networking and found out I could automate my job. And then that led into software development, and it's been a fun ride. It's been kind of fun to watch the agile movement sort of come and sort of rise up and be the thing, which is great. Got to partake in a little bit of that early on. The Scrum certification, actually, when it was first kind of started, was at the forefront of that. By that, I mean I was taking the beta test, which was cool. And then from there, worked at a couple agile companies along the way. Version 1 being the big one. They're been consumed a couple times now, but really loved working there, and kind of that's where I really crystallized a lot of the knowledge that I've been carrying forward and trying to show and teach anybody that'll listen.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to mob with Jesse quite a bit recently, and it's been good to learn a lot from him. So it's been really good times and good learning. And yeah, we're really super curious on this topic: mobbing pairing at startups and small companies. What you thinking there?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of bigger companies are doing this, right? They're doing the mobs, they're doing multiple teams and everything else. They're doing dojos, they're doing a lot of mob based kind of things, which I think is great. I'm glad to see that kind of taken off and everything else. But there was a startup I worked with a couple of years ago, and I sort of mentioned this to them, like, you guys all could work on the same problem at the same time. I didn't even call it mobbing. I just sort of gave them the idea. They're like, well, why would what like we all have our own things to do? Like, well, yeah, but wouldn't it be nice if everybody could do it? Because like you have finite resources and finite people. Let's spread that knowledge around so we can all take it on at the same time and also build a better product anyway, because you all have ideas. Let's share them. They kind of thought about it a little bit, and then come to find out, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, they published an article on their company webpage saying, this is what we're doing now. We're doing these patterns and learning to, disseminate the knowledge across the entire team. I'm like, really? So, of course, I was infinitely curious as to like how that went. And the CEO is really excited about it because he's like, yeah, I can, we've been kind of running a tear for quite a while. And if you've ever worked at a real startup, I don't mean a 10-year-old company. I mean like a company that's like 5 or 6 people total, like maybe. They go hard for so long and their heads are down that sometimes it's hard to realize like, hey, I need to hand this off to Austin because I'd like to, take a break for 5 minutes. And that became a huge thing for me because I'm like, all right, well, not only does it work really well for there, it's also helpful to the business so that they can kind of smooth out that hard work that they've got to do. So someone could leave for a little bit of time and not completely take out an entire part of the product. So I thought that was really cool how they didn't institutionalize it, but they use it strategically. They were like, ooh, here's a new thing. Let's all start working on it. And then they started to, pop off pieces and parts, which I thought was a good play. Like they took the idea and they kind of carried it forward for them, which I thought was appropriate.
Did it make their pace more sustainable? It sounds like it's the
Big time.
Yeah, sharing the knowledge, somebody able to take a vacation, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. And not only that, it was like because a lot of them were early on in their career, sub 5 years, people in the industry. So some of them had that magic ability of like, I happen to focus on this one thing, and I didn't know that everybody else doesn't know that. So there was a lot of that, instant transfer of like, oh, we could do these ways and not that way because this is better and easier to read and all that good stuff. And once they started to, like, one guy was really good at unit testing, particularly, which made me very, made me very proud. And that knowledge got kind of spread across so they could start building that stability inside the product. And that not only added the stability, but also the wait, what were we doing? And they would go back to it and be able to pick it up a lot faster, which again, that's a huge strategic advantage just from a business perspective, outside of making your employees happy and your customers are happier because your stuff is easier to pick up and change and move. So it just sort of like Like they saw the layering of it pretty quickly and capitalized on it, which is good. But everybody, oh, you can't do that in a small company. Yeah, you probably should do it in a small company more so than a big one. It's kind of helpful.
Yeah, you notice there's something you said that triggered a thought and question for me, which is I've never been in a startup, but I would imagine that pressure is high. Yeah. And for those you can't see, Jesse's making large hand motions right now.
Massive, big,
on
huge.
the podcast. Yeah, so I guess I never thought, because I noticed that in non-startups, being on a mob does help with pressure. And what was it like, I guess, in a startup? How did that influence that?
What initially caused the problem is that the CEO and owner, by the way, he was noticing that one of the people that had been there for quite a long time, and he didn't want to lose this person, was getting very short-tempered, very aloof, very disconnected, very just all the negative things you've ever seen. And the big question was like, I can't lose this guy. And I'm like, well, yes and no. Like he's exhibiting behaviors of being stressed out, like just like any other team on the planet. Like you have one person that's sort of, taking responsibility for everything. That's a problem. So that on top of the pressure of you have to keep delivering new features so that you get more customers so that you can afford to stay alive. Because after a while, if you've ever worked in a startup, there's a thing called runway, and that's how much money do we have if we get no more money, and how long can we survive? And everyone on the team is very well aware of that number. Like it's X amount of months or sometimes weeks before, hey, we got to land this deal or we have to increase our prices or something like that. So having that compounded with that pressure of, well, you're the go-to person and the person's being torn in 30 different directions. Well, yeah, and it matters. Like, and it's not like in larger companies where if we screw up and we take out a system, okay, so the company's probably going to lose money, but they're not going to go out of business. Startup, you might screw up and then they go out of business.
Yeah, there's no way to bail out, or failure is not safe. Like safety is low, right? And then there's all kinds of negative side effects that come from low safety.
Yep.
But then there's a benefit to, like you said, the de-siloing and resiliency to change. And so you gotta play with those trade-offs for sure, as you go through. But often also I see people not realizing how much faster they can go in a mob because they don't realize all of the waiting that happens in handoffs and things like that too. So a lot of it's non-obvious, and so to somebody in a startup with limited runway, the question of how do you make 4 people more effective working on one thing it becomes a much bigger question. Yeah,
and it helps with integrations of pieces being built too, because it's not like, well, Austin's got his thing, Chris has got his thing, and I've got my thing, and I'll just put it in there and they'll just make it work. It's more like, oh, okay, we talked about this. Here's kind of the idea. Hey, is that still the thing? And it's easier to pick up that conversation. It's easier to move it and mutate it, because as they found out, like one guy was really good at ripping on the back end stuff. Okay, great. So he just started saying, hey, this is the payload I'm going to send you. He wouldn't say the implementation or anything. It was like, you just make this call. This is the payload you're going to get. Work with that. And that shortened that wait period of like, it's deployed, but you haven't actually used it yet. And then on top of, hey, now I'm ahead of you. I can jump in with you. And it didn't feel as weird. Like it wasn't more like I'm coming to help you because you're slow. It's more like, okay, cool. I knocked my thing out. Now I can help you with your thing. And it became more of a fluid practice than it was before they started to, sort of like, hey, let's give this a try. Which is great.
Yeah, and I never thought about it before with the startup, but I feel like there's at least a connection of some kind. We've talked about before mobbing on like safety critical systems or things where the impact is really high. And so that could be a large company, but the product error has a big consequence. But I guess in a startup, error in general has a big consequence for the. It's like, and so it's definitely not the same, but probably leads to the same stress out and other patterns that can happen.
Yeah, and really nobody wants to cost their company tens of dollars, much less $1 million from a goof of some kind. Like there's a level of acceptance of, wow, we didn't know that. Oops, that happened to be a thing, which is very different from, what do you mean we just refunded everybody? Like that sort of oops. Like that one's just sort of like those. You probably shouldn't have done that. So there's definitely a higher resistance to change things. But if you have a lot more eyes on it, all of a sudden now it's not like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and if everybody misses it, well, then it probably was a fair problem. Like it wasn't one of those like, oh, you should have known better. Which is really funny when you start to get like security, people are really, really security minded, and then people who are really, really good at like databasey stuff, and other people that are really, really good at the lot. Like you get all of those people together. Now they're keeping an eye on each other.
Yeah,
which I love. Like that's the power of the mob.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your note here. It says, company-wise, in a startup or a small company, all the knowledge being in one person.
Yes.
So I feel like maybe that's a fragile situation.
It can be, right? Yeah. And a lot of these startups that I've seen, it's usually a guy or two. They're building a thing, right? And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we've got something. It's starting to happen. And now those two people, it's one person's got to be the front and the other one's got to be the builder. So those people start to split. And then all of a sudden, like, we've got to hire somebody. It's too much work. We actually have revenue. We can afford someone. And that's something that I've worked with a number of small companies with, is like, how do you hire developer zero? Like, you're now handing off your baby to someone else. And there's strong opinions on that, of course, because like, it's mine. It's like, I love it. Yeah. And then you get 2 people and 3 and 4, and then all of a sudden you have a real dev team. It's a very different mantra than just someone, slinging things out, and you don't have customers, so you don't really care if you break stuff. And then as you start to build it, all of a sudden now it's like, oops, we've got to really get pro on this. We've got to get serious. We've got to start protecting the thing that's making us money. I know, right? It's surprising. And being able to get that knowledge out and not be reliant on one person, because if that person does get that stressed out and quits, all that domain knowledge walks out the door. And that's a huge risk for some of these companies. Like you can't do that. Like that they don't have the time to rebuild that knowledge. They don't have 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have time to lose people and rehire and lose people and rehire and lose people and rehire.
Right. So it's like, and that's like almost in direct odds with the amount of work that they do. Like if you've ever worked in a startup, 40 hours a week isn't gonna cut it. Like it just doesn't work. Like you're gonna put in 80, maybe more. And then at some point you get to back that off. Right. But using some of those mob styles in those early days of growing the team, all of a sudden now you can actually step away for a day.
Yeah.
You might have to anyway. Like you might all of a sudden, like someone's like, you know what, I want to talk to your CEO and CTO. And it's like, hey, Austin, you're the CTO today. Get in here.
Yeah. And as we've seen, the studies on rest and all that stuff is important for quality, right?
Huge.
So being able to take a vacation is, I guess my impression of that in working for a bigger company is like, oh, it's a benefit. It's like it's like a nice thing, where in that mode, a vacation might be a necessity to not lose it or something, right? And so being able to step away and the code to continue is a big win for both people there and the people on the vacation. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of convincing. There was one CTO. I mean, again, this is like CTO in like 4 people. But they were the front, and I told them, like, look, you need go away, like go away for like 3 days, like take the rest of the week off, just go away. And they're like, oh, but we've got so much to do. I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll survive that amount of time. It'll be okay. I don't know if you will. Because this person was so like pent up, and reluctantly they took it, and apparently they just like beautifully disappeared for that week, like 5 days straight. They went up into the mountains and went to like a resort place and like just hung out, like didn't really like, it wasn't ski season or anything. But like hung out up there, just disconnected completely. And then when he came back, everything was fine. The code had still continued on. There had been a few deployments, like things were good. And he sort of on the side was like, I definitely needed that. I got to figure out a way to make that common. I'm like, just keep getting it out of your head. The more you can get out of your head, the better, because we need you over here. We need you on this side of the house to do this other stuff too.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It could be just more a team can be more resilient, especially without burnout, and burnout is a really common thing in the industry, especially in startups, right?
Yeah, because I mean, they're having fun, they're going hard, they're building a thing, it's exciting and all that, and at some point, like, usually, like I see about 6 months to a year is about the time they hit that wall, and they're like, oh, this hurts. Like, I'm tired all the time. It's like, yeah, it's spoilers. The symptom.
Yeah.
But yeah, mobbing definitely can help, and yeah, and it's effective in small stuff too. Like, it just works.
Yeah, in a university class, we talked quite a bit about leading from zero. If you're on it and you're trying to lead, all the major problems that happen from that. And so it feels counterintuitive, like it feels selfish to make time to be healthy. But if you don't, you're actually hurting everyone around you as well. So
well, yeah, and there's that whole negative side of it. I've heard of it called the well of fortitude. It's like eventually, like if your well goes dry, that's fine. It could refill, but if you continuously deplete it, it doesn't. The water doesn't come back. You dried it out. And some people have very, very small wells where they need to, they need to put that water back in by themselves, very, very frequently. And there's other people that I would wonder if they have an ocean underneath there. Which blows my mind. But it's like, yeah, you've got a deep well, but it's not finite. It will run out at some point.
Yes, yeah. And from stories I've heard, when it does run out, it's quite an explosion.
Yeah, it's not good.
Metaphors there, but
yeah. It's just like being dehydrated, right? It's like, I think it's like 21 days you can survive without water, or is it 3 days? 3 days without water. Yeah. So like, yeah, it's the same sort of effects. Like you just sort of like start to wither up a little bit.
Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe it's a good time to pivot to Lean XP developers as a competitive advantage. What's lurking around in your brain there?
Yeah. So I noticed this probably 5 years ago or so. Maybe it was a little bit more than that, but was working with a group, and they hired somebody that was Lean and XP, that like they came kind of prepackaged with all those approaches and styles that you would easily identify as such. And when they brought that person in, usually there's a ramp up time. Usually it takes months, to kind of learn the ropes and everything else. But because that person kind of came pre-programmed with ways of working and ways of engaging and everything else, the ramp up time was virtually zero. They were able to contribute very quickly. They were able to engage within the first week and properly contribute. And then from there on out, they were able to start, expanding into the stuff that they didn't know. Like there's always like, I know how to code, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, but I don't know how you guys do your thing. And when that switch started to take shape, like say, oh, that's what this part of the system is and everything else. And then they were able to compound it on top of it. but the ramp up time was weeks instead of months, which at the time I was like, huh, that's an interesting behavior and outcome. I wonder what that is. And eventually I kind of figured out that, like, when I go to a mob and they're doing lean and XP things, it's very fluid. It's very easy and quick to get onboarded. I'm like, huh. So not only that lean and XP building on top of that, but you join a mob, you can just jump right in. And you can take those people and slot them into any team that is like that, and they're just as effective. Like, you don't have to worry about, oh, they don't know it. So what? They come with some packaged experience, and they'll be able to rock and roll a lot faster. But ooh, XP and lean is scary. Well, yeah, but
yeah. And I kind of feel like what lean XP brings, I'm failing for the word, but if the team has it, as you're saying, or the person joining has it, it builds that slack that the system can absorb the normal onboarding stuff.
exactly. Yeah.
Well,
And
if everybody's if everyone, the person coming in and the people on the team already, if they're all familiar with XP, it is something like an agreed upon set of behaviors. And so you're the storming, forming, norming, like that part of it is out of the way almost, because
exactly,
it's but if you're joining a team and one person knows XP and another person just like, Wild West codes, and another person
exactly,
is, super only been in environments where there's like lots and lots of manual testers, then, it's the Tower of Babel at that point. And you're basically, everybody's speaking a different language. And so, yeah. But also, it's also harder to find people that know a particular practice, the extreme programming in this case, right? Is because sometimes it is a lot easier to onboard somebody that is already doing XP versus bringing on somebody that has done their entire career not XP and then asking them to do XP. And so, I find both paradigms pretty interesting. But for sure, it's so much, you skip past so much of the onboarding when you have a common framework to jump into together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the metaphor I've been using lately. I may have used it with one or both of you recently, is if someone is a strong lean XP developer, I almost see them as like a Navy SEAL. You can just kind of throw them anywhere and something good will happen. You can throw them in the worst situation. You can throw them in a good situation. It doesn't mean there's no problems. Like, I've definitely seen problems if you throw them in a situation, but they will hold their breath for an hour and then, or whatever a Navy SEAL can do. And then within a month, they've navigated through and started making good stuff happen, and so.
Yeah. And sort of on that note, like, if you've never been on a team like that, like you don't necessarily need to have all those, like, for those of you listening at home, if you're not very proficient in lean and XP, but you get the chance to see it and how it works and how it operates and everything else. As I've told interns before, when they've joined in teams that were highly effective, I'm like, I'm sorry, this will ruin you, because you will go to another team and you will be like, what are you doing? And you'll realize that was effective. This is ceremonious. Why are we doing these things? We could just do, and then all of a sudden you get the badge. You get to learn really hard that is different.
It's highly unfortunate. In our internship program, we do have a kind of like what Agile and software development look like outside of our environment. Because we did have interns come back and say like, I was asked in an interview what story points were, but we never estimated anything during the internship. And so it became pretty evident that when the interns apply for something afterwards, it was hurting them not to know what was maybe expected at different companies and things like that. And so it's like, yeah, and here's all this stuff that we don't do, that we don't really find valuable, but might be found to be valuable elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever did no estimates. This was years ago. With a he and I worked really well together, and the product owner was rock solid, like always good at breaking things down and giving it to us. And then finally, one morning, the other dev, he was like, "I'm not estimating any of these." I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Nope, everything's a 1. I don't care. It's good enough. It's not worth our time." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on board with that." And I'm like, 1 down the whole list. And the product owner gets in and he's like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And they're like, "Hey, we're done." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're done." Well, we need to estimate that. We already did. Well, I only see 1s. Isn't there a 2 in here somewhere? Probably, but who cares? Like, we'll get there. Okay. Do you need anything from me? Yeah. Can you make sure it's in priority? It's kind of important now. And then off we went, and that's how it was from there on out. Like, if we would take a thing off the board and start to work on it, this was like a Kanban style, but not really. And we would finish it, and then whatever was on top next. And he knew when we would take a thing, so he knew he could reprioritize at that point. But yeah, we operated that way for 3 to 6 months, no problems. And like we're telling the rest of the teams, like, we don't even bother. Like, what do you mean? Like, want to come on our team?
Well, and people don't realize it's like a very long meeting at a regular cadence that you just don't do, and you can spend all of that time building stuff that people will find valuable.
Yeah, and what I've noticed from that too, because I before my last 5-6 years of mobbing no estimates thing, did quite a bit of the traditional ceremonies with estimates, and there were valuable conversations that came out of that. But what I've noticed is when you don't do the estimate, but then when you start working on the thing, those valuable conversations still happen, but they happen at the right time, which is right as you're working on it, not
the last possible
months
moment
before that you forget by the time, or the world has changed since then, or whatever. So
back in the day, I used to do a story point estimation kind of ceremony sort of thing, and really the head fake on it was the team really didn't talk to each other much. So I mean, yeah, we had stand-ups, but they were statusy. They weren't really good. But during those meetings, the thing that would come out for me was, where's the danger? Where's the high risk? Where's the things we should have been talking about? And maybe we can defer that and do it later. And that was useful, but it was a Band-Aid on the real symptom, which was team communication wasn't there. Like, they weren't talking. The product owner really wasn't. A lot of dictation instead of solicitation. So
the problem's not there if you work differently. Very nice.
Yeah, goes away.
I'm very tempted to grab this next note off of topics here.
Hit it.
I think, is this the time to put on our propeller hats, or get out our crystal balls?
Let's do it.
And there's been episodes in the past where we've done some futurism type thing, looking forward, and we've gotten comments like, "Wow, that turned out to be that crazy thing Chris said turned out to be a thing." So who knows what we may predict now. So 20 years of Agile, what's next? What do you think, Jesse?
I think so. Being in the Agile space for so long, you kind of seen a regurgitation of the same thing over and over again now. Like, it's sort of like there's not a whole lot new, changing, moving things in here. But if you look just slightly outside of just the development side of the house, if you look more at product, you look more at UX, you look more at the business side of it, those things are now starting to be, instead of silos, I would say they're more like a layered cake. Like, they're really close together. There might be a little bit of gel in between them, some of that good frosting stuff. If you're good at velvet cake, you can send it to me. I love that stuff, and I'm not a sweets guy, so please do. And like design thinking, systems thinking, like looking more outside at the whole and seeing how it influences the internals on top of what can be solved, what can be automated, what can be removed, what can be thrown out, what should we do first. And I think a lot of those practices still feel and seem like they're outside of development, and they're not. So like I've used a lot of design thinking and systems thinking in some of the teachings that I've done around the dojo stuff. I don't call it that, but that's what it is. And I think those paired with like the experimentations of like, hey, we're going to go test with this user. We're going to see what they do. Oh, we're going to change our UI a little bit. We're going to try to make the experience better. I think all of those things are kind of rolling up into a bigger set, but less less nebulous, less unknown, less, it's more right next door instead of down the road and around the corner.
Okay, nice. No aliens, I thought.
Well, there could be aliens. I don't know. We should test for
that. Okay. Nice. And is it over? Is Agile over?
I think it's over as a term in general, because it's so dirty now. Everyone's like, I've tried that, it doesn't work. And yes, you tried that. You probably didn't give it the full love it deserves. Because like at a large financial company, I was talking to a pretty high up senior VP, and I'm like, well, if the people here are not ready to change, and you're not willing to change, and you're not willing to influence them, you can put the Band-Aid on it and say, we're trying Agile and try to attract people here. Those people are going to show up. They're going to get really frustrated really quickly, and they're going to leave within the first 18 months. I'm sorry. Like the people you really, really want are going to walk away very quickly because they're going to go, you lied to me. And then they're going to bust out. So I think the term as a marketing term almost now, the practices are still solid. I still think that they're the best way to build and develop and deploy and work. But I think that it's turned into that big machine with, how dare I say, certifications all over the place, that, yeah, you're certified. You don't really understand what pieces and parts, when and where need to be used. And even more so, when to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Like estimates are great until you don't need them anymore. You might outgrow them, which is phenomenal. That's a wonderful thing. Oh, but Agile says we have to. No, not really. Not really.
Agile industrial complex, right?
I love it. Yeah. It kind of is. Like there's people I know that have been doing the exact same teachings and classes for 15 years. And I'm like, there's more now. There's better now. And you should be able to show people those teachings. Like you've seen it up close with me. And it's amazing to see that there's some places just want to keep beating that drum. Like get on it.
Yeah. When I when I talk to family members or friends sometimes about like how we work, I'm always kind of like, yeah, I think we're like the weird hippies in the woods, like bleeding edge, like, like doing things that no one else is operating that way, so to kind of give them idea that that was something that was really attractive to the way to join a place where we mob a lot. Was, I think I was at a place that kind of like got, like you said, the script for like one level of it, and they're like, okay, this is it from now on. And I'm like, oh, but look over here, they're doing better stuff. Like, can we try that?
That's too radical. That's too
right. And there was support there too, but it was just like you hit a ceiling in certain systems and stuff. And so to go into one where you can keep experimenting and innovating and trying stuff and failing and finding the next better thing is super fun. So yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's fun too when people read these books that have been written about like how to really run your dev shop, for instance. Like you should you should write tests, you should do this, you should do that, and all these things. And people who've never seen it, kind of think it's a pie in the sky, and it's unobtainium. We can't possibly do that. And then they try to institutionalize it and force it on the teams, and they haven't seen it either, so it's a thrash and all that sort of stuff. Which is part of the pain that I feel like when I sort of tell people, here's how you could do it, and here's where I would start. And they're like, we just can't do that. That's just not how. And it's because they can't. Like it doesn't grok. It doesn't hit them where like, oh, this is how I bolt this in, and this is what it gets me, and then I can get this instead, and blah blah. And it's just tough.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, we might be getting close. Chris is probably going to close us down here. But before Chris does, maybe a sound bite on mentoring devs and CTOs. I'm curious.
Yeah, this is something I've been doing for quite a while now. As a matter of fact, I think I've picked up another mentee just recently. It's actually a guy I worked with like 15 years ago. His daughter now is switching careers. But I really enjoy getting people who are willing and ready to kind of take the jump and learn and try different things and just have a soundboard. I've been doing that now for a while. I've been doing it for startups, the company and the individuals. So I really enjoy that. So if anybody's hearing this and wants to reach out, I usually tell people you will outgrow me. I will give you everything I possibly can. And I'm here to take not 5 years off your life, 6 years off your life. Because I have data. I have data to back this up, which is awesome.
Very cool. Well, would you like to plug or share anything before we close it out?
No, not really. Just I mean, if you're out there listening and watching this right now, and you're like, I'm not so sure, I don't know, try. Like that's 90% of this. Is just trying it and trying to read between the lines, see between the lines, and truly understanding what they're for, what they do, and what they're going to give you. And I think that some of the best teams I've ever worked on have been in that very collaborative space. And I don't mean the collaborative like the weak stuff. I mean like really like, yo Chris, like I don't know how to do this. Can you just rip on this? Like my brain's dead right now. Can you do this? And Austin's like, yeah, no problem. I got this too. We're gonna do this thing. Hey, here's the direction we need to go in. And it's just a good camaraderie that comes out of it naturally. Just try it. You might like it.
All right. Well, to our audience, if you know somebody who would like to grok the unobtainium, then please share this episode with them. And chat about it in the comments as well, and like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And Jesse, thanks for joining us. And to our audience, thanks for listening. Bye everybody.
Thank y'all.